Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 11, First Year 02. Third Person POV. Ninja Academy, Konoha, Year 32. Sitting at the back of the room, Minato found himself once again in the company of Tsuna and Makoto. The atmosphere among the trio was mixed, alternating between conversations and a subtle rivalry between the two girls, while Minato wished to be anywhere but in the middle of these two troublemakers, as he classified them. Suddenly, Makoto broke the silence with a sharp observation. "I noticed he didn't run away from you this time. Did you threaten him?" she inquired, casting a perceptive glance toward Tsuna. "He never ran away from me." "My mother said that's just how boys are," Tsuna quickly responded, crossing her arms defensively, a hint of pride tinting her words. "What kind of talk is this? You're only 6 years old, you should be talking about dolls, not these more adult things," Minato murmured, a bit exasperated with the direction the conversation was taking. He was more comfortable discussing techniques and training than navigating the complexities of his female peers' interactions with the opposite sex. Spoken like the 6-year-old boy who's learning to be an assassin. Makoto retorted with a sarcastic look toward Minato. "I guess that's fair," he admitted, recognizing the irony of the situation. "You're hurt, your hands are also quite worn, this means you weren't in a fight, but in training." Makoto continued speaking after Minato's remark, her analytical eyes observing the signs of wear on Minato. "It's true, I was training. I want to improve my control and my skills with kunais, so I'm training after school," Minato openly admitted, seeing no reason to hide his efforts and dedication. "What kind of training is it that you come all bruised?" Tsuna questioned, a tone of concern mixed with mockery in her voice. "I don't have a large clan behind me. I have to make do with what I have. I train in the public fields," Minato confessed. He didn't have the luxury of resources or private training that many of his classmates had, but that didn't diminish his determination. "I see. It must be good, since there's no one watching you all the time and criticizing every mistake," Makoto commented, a glimpse of envy in her voice. She never liked the constant pressure and high expectations her father and the Uchiha clan placed on her, especially regarding training. It was a weight she carried every day, and the idea of training freely, away from judgmental eyes, seemed appealing to her. But having some guidance is good. Minato pondered aloud, recognizing the advantages of having a mentor or someone experienced to guide and correct mistakes. While he valued his independence, he knew that proper guidance could speed up his progress and help him avoid common pitfalls on the path of a ninja. "Minato, do you train chakra control and kunais?" Tsuna asked, curious about the details of Minato's training. "Yes, but I use wooden kunais. I need to earn some money to buy better equipment. I have a plan to have an income, but I want to learn Fuinjutsu. Maybe I can make some money in the future if I can get a master to create some seals," Minato commented quietly, sharing his goals and the limitations he faced due to a lack of resources. "Fuinjutsu, so boring." Makoto grimaced, expressing her personal opinion on that particular area. She preferred more direct and impactful methods of combat. "I have to admit that it's kind of boring, but my mother is forcing me to learn some seals, especially the one she uses as her main weapon," Tsuna shared, a bit of resentment in her voice. "I envy you, Tsuna. You can have contact with Mito-sama. What I wouldn't give to become her apprentice." Minato expressed his deep desire to learn from the best, especially in the field of Fuinjutsu. Mito Uzumaki was known for her proficiency in that area, but Minato knew that accessing her as a master was beyond his current possibilities. "Yes, great-grandmother is the best. There's no one more powerful in the world than her, even among the Uzumakis in Yuzu." Tsuna spoke with pride, her eyes shining as she spoke of her famous great-grandmother. "I imagine." Minato lay back in his arms while murmuring,
If you want, I can talk to great-grandmother, she always listens to me. Suna continued, the pride in her voice clearly evident. Her offer was sincere and reflected the closeness and respect she had for the powerful matriarch of her family. I would appreciate it.
Minato replied quietly, his voice tinged with a mix of hope and skepticism.
He knew that despite Suna's generous offer, the chances of being accepted as an apprentice to Mito Uzumaki were slim. He had a feeling that fate would lead him to learn from Mito through Kushina, not directly through Tsuna.
As they talked, the class was suddenly interrupted by the teacher, who brought up a new fascinating topic for the rest. Did you know that you can master all the elements of chakra? He asked, immediately capturing everyone's attention, which left aside the conversation with the girls to focus on the class. Really, can we learn all 5 elements? A student asked, clearly excited by the possibility. It's true, but it requires dedication. The Hokage-sama is a man who mastered all of them, that's why he is considered the greatest Hokage. The teacher explained with pride in his voice. Greatest Hokage. He wouldn't last 5 minutes with Hashirama in his prime. Minato murmured to himself, unable to resist mocking the statement. In his opinion, the 3rd Hokage was far from being the most powerful, especially when compared to the legendary figure of Hashirama Senju. Anyway, we're going to have a lunch break. This afternoon we're going to the training track to do some exercises, so get ready for the workout, the teacher announced, to the delight of many children in the room who were eager for a change of activity at last. Minato picked up the food container that Madame Guerite had prepared for him and headed to a quiet spot under a tree. As he ate his lunch, his thoughts wandered about what he had learned and the possibilities the future might bring. Meanwhile, 3 shadows dimmed the sun in front of Minato. Hey, are you Minato Namikaze? The civilian who hangs out with Tsuna Senju and Makoto Uchiha? Said a slightly older boy with a disdainful air as he approached Minato. His posture was challenging, and he looked at Minato as if expecting the mere fact of being a year older to give him some authority. That's my name. What can I do for you, brat? Minato responded without hesitation, an eyebrow arched in challenge. He was not willing to be intimidated or looked down upon just because someone had decided to confront him. Brat? What did you call me? The boy immediately shouted, his voice full of indignation and anger. Minato, on the other hand, shrugged while opening his food, clearly uninterested in a pointless quarrel. My name is Kai Inuzuka. You better stay away from those girls, civilian. He said, trying to threaten Minato, but he just continued eating, enjoying the meal Madame Guerite had prepared. Madame Guerite always knows how to make great food. Minato praised, more interested in his meal than in the growing frustration of the Inuzuka. Hey, I'm talking to you. The Inuzuka shouted, trying to capture Minato's attention, who looked at him with an interrogative gaze, clearly indifferent to the supposed threat. Sorry, I didn't hear. Who are you again? Minato asked, scratching his head, genuinely confused about what that boy wanted from him at such a delicate time as lunch. I said I am. Get out of the way. A new voice interrupted with a punch to the Inuzuka boy's head, sending him flying to the side as he fell knocked out. Mr. Inuzuka. His classmates quickly ran to where he fell, concerned about the sudden attack. Suna? Minato was surprised by the sudden appearance of the blonde girl, who approached him with her hair swinging in the wind. I saw you here alone and it looked like you were in trouble, Suna said, crossing her arms while staring at Minato with a concerned look, but at the same time strong and determined. I didn't need help, I could handle some brats, Minato responded with a shrug. TSK. You're also a brat, Minato. Makoto appeared right behind Suna. What are you doing here too? Suna looked at her suspiciously, clearly not expecting Makoto to join them. I wanted to see how the fight would unfold, but you protected your boyfriend so quickly. Makoto said calmly, provoking Suna with a comment she knew would irritate her. Who's my boyfriend? And you didn't answer why you're here. You should be with your clan, Suna retorted, frustration and anger growing within her. I'm not. They're so boring and arrogant, so I came here with you, Makoto replied with a small smile. She calls them arrogant. Both Suna and Minato murmured about the girl who was arrogant herself.
Chapter 12, First Year 03. Third Person POV. Ninja Academy, Konoha, Year 32.
In the afternoon, with the sun high in the sky and the heat permeating the air, the teacher gathered the elite class at the training track in the courtyard, a spacious and well-equipped space designed to test and develop the physical and mental abilities of the young ninjas. The children gathered, some excited, others nervous, but all aware that this training was a crucial part of their ninja journey. Today we will test your physical fitness. Don't worry about the initial result. We have years to train you, and you're in the elite class for a reason. So just strive to improve from today onwards, the teacher said, offering words of encouragement. His voice was calm and steady, conveying the seriousness of the training, but also an underlying confidence in each student's abilities. As everyone familiarized themselves with the track, looking at the various obstacles that included walls to climb, beams to balance on, and areas designated to test agility and speed, the air was charged with a mix of anticipation and determination. Some students stretched, others exchanged words of encouragement or strategies, and some, like Minato, quietly observed, mentally preparing for the challenge ahead. I want everyone to line up at the start of the obstacle course. We're going to do an initial circuit to assess your physical level, the instructor announced, and all the children began to line up at the starting line. They positioned themselves side by side, some with confident postures, others a bit more hesitant, but all ready to begin. Minato took his place in the line, next to Tsuna and Makoto, his already common partners. He could feel their tension, the friendly but intense competition between the girls. He knew that, despite being together, each one was focused on their own goals and desires for improvement. The teacher raised his hand, ready to give the start signal. A tense silence fell over the track as all eyes focused on him, waiting for the moment to begin. And then, with a decisive nod, the race began. The students took off, each with their own pace and style, facing the obstacles with determination and courage. It was the beginning of not just a simple circuit, but a long and challenging path toward mastery and excellence with parkour and speed. As the young ninjas raced towards the obstacle circuit, the track was a tangle of challenges designed to test strength, agility, and speed. Minato, although a civilian, had exceptional physical characteristics, a result of his origins in the world of One Piece. His body was naturally more powerful and resilient, and he moved with an agility and strength that surprised many of his peers. The first obstacle was a series of tall walls that needed to be climbed. While some students struggled to find a foothold, Minato used his superior strength to propel himself upward, almost with ease, his movements fluid and precise. Incredible, he's really a civilian. Someone asked. He's not even sweating chakra. Tsuna reflected with some surprise. Yes, he's using pure physical strength, but how is that possible? Makoto also murmured. Moving forward, there was a narrow beam that required balance and concentration. Here, many students faltered, their bodies swaying uncertainly. Minato, however, crossed the beam with the confidence of someone accustomed to high-sea battles and maneuvers on rocking ships naturally. His posture was firm, his eyes fixed on the goal ahead. Next, the circuit led to a series of barriers and tunnels that required agility and flexibility. Minato stood out, his speed almost a blur to the onlookers. He moved with a grace that belied his power, sliding under barriers and twisting through narrow tunnels with ease that made it clear his training and origin were not as ordinary as many thought. But what really impressed was his endurance. While others began to show signs of fatigue, Minato's breathing remained controlled, his movements as efficient at the end of the circuit as at the beginning. He treated each obstacle as an opponent to be overcome, a chance to prove to himself and others what he was capable of. At the end of the circuit, while other students arrived panting and exhausted, Minato completed the course with a breadth that surprised even the teachers. He didn't reach first place, as he was competing with students who had been training since birth for their clans, but he certainly surpassed most of the other students. Minato's performance did not go unnoticed. Murmurs and looks of admiration, envy, and surprise ran through the crowd that arrived after him at the finish line. Even Tsuna and Makoto, who knew Minato better than most, couldn't help but be impressed with the demonstration of skill and strength. As Minato caught his breath, his thoughts were already on the next challenge, the next chance to improve and grow. After the completion of the circuit, while the young ninjas recovered, panting and exhausted, the teacher walked along the finish line, holding a clipboard and carefully noting the results of each student. He observed each one with an attentive eye, marking the times, highlighting the strengths, and the areas that needed improvement. The teacher approached Minato, looking at the clipboard before fixing his eyes on the young ninja. "Minato Namikaze," he began, his voice carrying a tone of respect and a bit of surprise. "Your time and ability on the circuit were remarkable. Your strength, agility, and endurance are exceptional, especially for a civilian, and you did this with physical capabilities. This speaks volumes about your commitment and potential." Minato just nodded, listening attentively. He was aware of his abilities, but he knew that praise from the teacher was not the ultimate goal. It was just the confirmation that he was on the right path. The teacher made a special mark next to Minato's name on the clipboard and then continued to speak. "However, the path of a ninja is not just about physical ability. Tactics, strategy, chakra control, teamwork, and many other aspects are equally important. I hope you continue to develop in all these areas." "Understood, Professor," Minato responded, his voice firm and determined. He knew that the original Minato would have already been breaking all the academy records at this time before Kakashi, so he must do even better. As the teacher moved away to continue his notes, Minato looked around at his peers. He saw Tsuna and Makoto discussing their own results, some students expressing frustration, others joy, and still others silent determination. These two are always fighting all the time. Minato looked at the girls with a lost gaze. After the obstacle course, the teacher guided the students to a new training area, aimed at improving precision in kunai throwing. It was a crucial skill for any ninja, useful both in combat and on missions that required discretion and accuracy. Minato joined his peers, each receiving a set of kunais to practice. "The wooden kunais I use have the same weight as these, but it's still quite different to hold a real one compared to a copy," Minato murmured, balancing the weapon for the first time. Lined up in front of targets fixed at various distances, the students began to throw their kunais, one after the other. There was a palpable tension in the air, a mix of concentration and competition among the children. Minato positioned himself, briefly observing the others before focusing on his own target. He took a deep breath, seeking to find a state of calm and focus. Throwing kunais was never his strong point. He knew that his precision was mediocre compared to some of the other skills he possessed. With a fluid motion, he threw the first kunai, watching as it spun through the air and hit the target, but not exactly at the point he was aiming for. It hit the target, but far from the center. Minato threw one kunai after another, each time adjusting his aim, his strength, and his control. Despite his efforts, only 40% of his kunais hit a satisfactory area of the target. Frustration began to form within him, but he refused to let it take over. He was determined to improve, no matter how many attempts it took. Beside him, Tsuna and Makoto also practiced. Tsuna, with impressive precision, threw her kunais with confidence and skill, while Makoto, even more adept, showed her mastery with each throw. "Focus, Minato. Visualize the exact point you want to hit," the teacher advised, noticing Minato's struggle. He offered some additional tips on posture and throwing technique, hoping to help the young ninja improve. Minato nodded in acknowledgement and took another deep breath. He remembered the intense training he had undergone, the hours of practice, and the burning desire to improve. With a new sense of determination, he threw another kunai, watching closely its flight and impact. The kunai hit closer to the center, a small but significant progress. "I'm on the way, but I need to improve a lot with my training," he murmured, still not satisfied with the result. Chapter 13, First Year 04. Third Person POV. Ninja Academy, Konoha, Year 32. After the kunai throwing session, the teacher decided to shift the focus of the training to hand-to-hand combat. It was an essential part of ninja training, teaching not just fighting techniques but also how to react under pressure, assess opponents, and quickly adapt to varied situations. The children gathered, some eager, others apprehensive, but all aware that this would be a test of their physical and mental abilities. "Let's test your combat skills," announced the teacher. "It's not just about strength, but strategy, agility, and effective use of your environment.
Remember, the goal is not to severely injure your opponent, but to demonstrate control and technique.
The students were paired up, and the training field quickly transformed into a whirlwind of activity.
Minato was paired with a classmate he only knew by sight.
Although not as physically imposing as some of the other students, there was a clear determination in their eyes. As the fight began, Minato focused on observing and reacting. He knew his physical abilities were strong, but he was also aware that hand-to-hand combat was unpredictable and that any overconfidence could be quickly undone. He moved with agility, defending against his opponent's attacks and looking for opportunities to counterattack.
Around him, the training area was full of action.
Some fights were quick and decisive, while others were prolonged tests of endurance and skill.
Shouts of encouragement and frustration could be heard mixed with the sound of rapid footsteps and strikes. Minato, using his superior strength and speed, began to gain an advantage in his fight.
He dodged attacks gracefully and responded with controlled strikes, always careful not to cause serious injury. He could feel fatigue beginning to affect his opponent, but instead of using that to end the fight quickly, he slowed down, allowing both to have a longer, more analytical training. At the end of the exercise, Minato emerged victorious, but his spirit of camaraderie remained intact. "It was a good fight," he said, extending his hand in a gesture of friendship and respect.
"Thank you. I guess." The classmate responded, still catching their breath, but clearly grateful for Minato's consideration.
It was then that the teacher intervened, deciding to raise the level of challenge for Minato. "Minato, fight against Shikaku," he announced, referring to Shikaku Nara, known for his intelligence and strategic skills, as well as his characteristic laziness.
"Such a drag. Go easy."
"I don't want to go home hurt," Shikaku spoke in a typically bored tone of his clan. Minato sighed, understanding the reluctant nature of his new opponent, but also recognizing the opportunity to learn from someone whose skills were more mental than physical. The ensuing fight was an interesting contrast to the previous one. Shikaku, despite his lazy demeanor, was a cunning opponent, using his shadow jutsu to try and control and predict Minato's movements. Minato, in turn, had to adapt his fighting style, relying less on brute force and more on speed and strategy to overcome Shikaku's deceptive techniques. Eventually, the cat-and-mouse game began to wear on Shikaku, who clearly preferred activities that required less physical effort. With an exaggerated yawn and a look conveying a mix of boredom and mild irritation, he finally backed off.
"Such a drag."
"That's enough," Shikaku announced, his voice laden with boredom as he put his hands in his pockets and slowly walked away.
"I'm not interested in getting hurt just to prove a point. You win, Minato Namikaze."
His casual attitude and lack of interest in continuing the fight didn't surprise Minato, who knew the Nara clan's reputation for preferring mind over muscle.
Minato, watching Shikaku walk away, sighed lightly, a mix of relief and disappointment in his chest.
He understood and respected Shikaku's decision, but at the same time, longed for a challenge that would truly test his abilities. His attention, however, was quickly diverted by a commotion around.
"Ow, look at them!"
An excited child's voice cut through the air, followed by murmurs and glances pointed towards another part of the training area. Curious, Minato turned to see what was attracting so much attention. At the center of the training track, Suna Senju and Makoto Uchiha stood face to face, ready to begin their own fight. It was a scene that captured attention. On one side, Suna, known for her physical strength and the fierce determination that ran in her Senju blood; on the other, Makoto, with her speed and agility that made her a formidable opponent, distinctive traits of the Uchiha clan. As the fight began, the difference between their approaches became evident. Makoto moved like a blur, her steps quick and light, almost dancing around Suna, who, in turn, responded with powerful and decisive movements. Each of Suna's strikes was a demonstration of pure strength, while each of Makoto's dodges was a testament to her exceptional speed. The fight between them was like a ballet of contrasts, strength against speed, power against agility. The other children watched in silence, some cheering, others merely absorbing every move, every tactical decision. Minato, in particular, also watched the fight attentively, hoping to absorb something from the different fighting styles, even though his style was more like Makoto's, favoring speed. The fight made all other bouts stop to watch the exchange of fists between the girls. Each strike, each dodge was made by two of the class's leading geniuses. In the end, the fight ended in a draw with the interference of the teacher.
You managed to get out unscathed this time, Uchiha, Suna spoke arrogantly. You were lucky, Senju. Next time won't be so easy. Makoto spoke with a small smile.
Meanwhile, the teacher continued the fights.
Let's continue the fights. Minato, fight against Choza Akimichi, the teacher instructed, and Minato nodded.
Choza Akimichi would not just be a member of the renowned Akimichi clan, known for their ability to manipulate their size and weight, which gave them a significant advantage in terms of strength and defense, but also the future patriarch of the clan like Shikaku. Minato knew that this fight would be a true test of his abilities, facing an opponent with such unique and powerful potential and capacity. As they positioned themselves, Minato assessed Choza, trying to plan a strategy. He knew brute force wouldn't be enough and that he would need to use his speed and agility to try to circumvent Choza's defense. The fight began with Choza immediately utilizing his body strength, jumping on top of Minato to slow his movement. Minato, moving quickly, tried to find a weak point, a moment of opening. He dodged Choza's powerful blows, each capable of causing serious damage if it hit. Minato managed to land a few strikes, but soon realized that his damage was minimal due to Choza's impressive natural defense. Each attack Minato made seemed only to make Choza more determined. The Akimichi used his strength trying to unbalance Minato and force him into a vulnerable position. The fight continued, with Minato striving to maintain agility, but fatigue began to set in. Each dodge and run consumed his energy, and he could feel his pace slowing down. Choza, noticing this, intensified his attacks, becoming increasingly confident of his victory. Finally, in a critical moment, Minato stumbled, a fraction of a second of hesitation that was enough for Choza to take advantage. With a quick and powerful move, Choza managed to hit Minato, sending him to the ground with a surprising impact. Minato lay there, panting and defeated, but not discouraged. He knew that each defeat was a lesson, a moment of learning to become stronger. Slowly getting up, he faced Choza with a look of respect. Good fight, he said sincerely, acknowledging his opponent's skill. Choza offered his hand to help Minato up. You fought well too, he replied, a sign of mutual respect between the two. The teacher, observing the end of the fight, noted the results and moved on to the next combatants. Minato's next opponent had a mocking and confident look. I'm Ake Uchiha, I'll defeat you easily as any Uchiha would, civilian. The boy taunted, clearly underestimating Minato due to his lack of a renowned clan and by his natural Uchiha pride. Minato, in turn, rolled his eyes, not letting himself be intimidated by Akame's provocative words. Both positioned themselves in the makeshift ring for the fight, under the watchful eye of the teacher and peers. The fight began, and immediately it was clear that Akame had more training. His stance was firmer, his movements more fluid and confident. He advanced quickly, trying to dominate Minato with a series of agile moves. Minato, in turn, remained focused, dodging Akame's attacks and trying to find an opening. Despite his lack of formal training, Minato had an iron determination and a natural ability to adapt quickly. He observed every move of Akame, learning and anticipating. However, Akame's skill and confidence were palpable, and he seemed to have control of the fight. But then, in the heat of the moment and perhaps due to overconfidence, Akame made a mistake. In a particularly arrogant move, he attempted a boulder strike, hoping to finalize the fight with style. It was the slip that Minato was waiting for. He saw the opening created by Akame's arrogance and, with a quick movement, took advantage of the chance. Minato, using his agility, circled around Akame and, with a surprisingly strong push for a boy his age, launched Akame out of the ring. It was a simple but effective move, executed at the exact right moment. Akame fell to the ground with a dull thud, his expression mixing surprise and confusion. For a moment, the ring was in sepulchral silence, all those present absorbing the unexpected outcome of the fight. Minato, standing, still catching his breath after the effort, felt a wave of realization. He had faced a considerable challenge and emerged victorious. It was a good fight, the teacher finally broke the silence, praising both competitors. His voice carried a tone of respect and a slight touch of surprise, reflecting the reaction of the spectators. I should have won that fight. Akame protested, his voice tinged with arrogance and a touch of resentment. He was still on the ground, looking incredulously at Minato. "Yes, but you're very careless,"
Makoto commented, an evident mockery in her voice as she watched the scene with crossed arms. She couldn't help but point out the flaw that had cost Akame the fight. TSK. Akame clicked his tongue in frustration, clearly dissatisfied with how things had unfolded. The teacher, seizing the moment as a teaching opportunity, addressed all the students. "Remember, a ninja always has to be attentive, Akame. I hope you learn from this. And Minato, congratulations on using the disadvantages of a stronger opponent," he praised. His words served as a reminder that cunning and perception were as important as brute strength on the path of a ninja. With that, the class came to an end. The students, still discussing the fights and their outcomes, began to go their separate ways. Minato, with the fresh victory in his mind, decided to use the rest of the afternoon for further training. He knew that each victory was just one step in his journey and that there would always be more to learn and more challenges to face. Determined and focused, he headed to the training field, ready to continue honing his skills and preparing for the future. Chapter 14, First Year 05. Third Person POV. Hokage Tower, Konoha, Year 32. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with vibrant colors, Minato headed to his favorite training spot. He was determined to make the most of the last moments of the day to improve himself, especially after the day's events. The victories and defeats he had endured had given him a new sense of purpose and determination. He knew he needed to grow much more to reach his ideal. While Minato focused on his training, practicing his senses to develop his haki, and working on his taijutsu with his technique based on agility and strength, something important was happening in the Hokage's office. The village leader, a man of great wisdom and power, was receiving a detailed report on the students of Class A, the elite class of the academy this year. "This is this year's batch, interesting," he murmured, spreading papers with various profiles across his desk. Among the various names, some he knew very well either by the name of their clan or by knowing their parents. The main children had potential that could bring changes to the village and to the ninja world as a whole. Hiruzen reflected on each of them, thinking about how he could guide and support their growth. Suna Senju, with her renowned lineage and impressive physical strength from the first and second Hokage, already showed signs that she could have as much talent as her mother, a powerful kunoichi. Her connection to the legendary first Hokage and the heritage of her clan brought great expectations, but also immense responsibility. Makoto Uchiha, with her speed and the promise of an early Sharingan, carried the legacy of one of the village's most powerful clans, but was also someone the Hokage should keep an eye on if she showed too much potential. And then there was Minato Namikaze, the clanless boy who impressed everyone with his large amount of chakra, multiple elemental affinities, and notable physical aptitude. The Hokage was particularly intrigued by him. Minato didn't have the backing of a powerful clan, but his abilities and potentials indicated that he could one day become an exceptional ninja, perhaps an elite jonin or something more. Hiruzen was still skeptical about Minato's potential, but he could not deny the potential that this child represented. The Hokage read carefully the notes about Minato. Large amount of chakra, 3 elemental affinities, naturally high physical aptitude. He murmured to himself. It seems Namikaze was a small clan that disappeared with the First War. They specialized in spacetime techniques, interesting. He read about a few more children and was pleased with what he saw. Interesting, the Hokage commented, putting the report aside. He knew that the village's future had promising sprouts, seeing that peace is cracking every moment and soon war will break out, so it's better to have capable ninjas for the future. As the Hokage lost himself in his thoughts about the future of the young ninjas of the village, a familiar and laid-back voice emerged from one of the open windows of the office. The Hokage sighed, a mix of resignation and affection in his gaze. "I see you're thinking again, maybe about a hot spring?" Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin and one of the Hokage's most notorious students, appeared with his mischievous smile and playful gaze. "You like to show up every day, Jiraiya," the Hokage commented, a slight smile forming on his lips despite his attempt to maintain a serious demeanor. "I just came to say hello." Jiraiya approached with interest, his eyes quickly turning to the Hokage's desk, where the report of the new students was. "This is the report of the new students," the Hokage confirmed, noting Jiraiya's sudden interest. Interesting, I'm interested in one too, here it is. Jiraiya pointed to the name of Minato Namikaze on the report. The Namikaze? Perhaps because he's a civilian like you? The Hokage raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his student's choice. Maybe, but there's no denying the boy has potential. I want him when he graduates, Jiraiya spoke with a firm and determined tone, a rarity for the normally jovial Sannin. You? Why are you so interested in the boy? By the way, I don't know if I can do that. Danzo was recruiting for his new division, the Root, and he needs new talents, Hiruzen commented, starting to smoke his pipe, the concern evident in his voice. Sorry, sensei. But I want him, no matter who I have to fight with. I'll become this child's teacher, Jiraiya declared, his usually playful tone now replaced by an unusual seriousness. Well, if you're so insistent, I can grant that to you, but I want to know about your latest research, the Hokage spoke, a smile forming on his lips at the mention of Jiraiya's notorious interest in research. Jiraiya beamed at this, clearly pleased with his master's concession. Oh, sensei, you're going to love hearing about this, he responded, already preparing to recount his adventures and discoveries. While Jiraiya spoke animatedly with the Hokage, young Minato was engaged in his training in the dense forest that surrounded the Leaf Village before the sun completely set. He was determined to make some progress in observation haki. Minato ran through the forest, his eyes blindfolded as always to increase his reliance on other senses. I just need to concentrate, he murmured to himself, trying to tune in and trust his instincts about the world around him. But the task was not easy. Several times he stumbled over exposed roots or collided with low tree trunks. Ouch, he exclaimed, hitting a tree with his face. He fell to the ground, holding his sore nose. For a moment, he considered giving up for today. However, the image of the future he aspired to began to appear to him. I need to keep going, he murmured. He got up, shook the dirt off his clothes, and prepared to continue. Taking a deep breath, Minato started running again, trying to open himself to the sensations around him. He felt the wind whispering among the leaves, heard the chirping of the birds at the end of the day calming down with the approach of night, and even the slight crackling of a branch breaking under his foot. Then, something changed. For a brief moment, it seemed like the world around him slowed down. He felt something, a presence, an imminent danger coming from his right. Instinctively, he turned to the left, a sudden and clumsy move, but effective. He felt the rough bark of the tree brush lightly against his shoulder instead of colliding head-on as before. He stopped, panting, trying to understand what had just happened. For a brief moment, Minato felt a clarity, a perception beyond his normal senses. Could it have been observation haki, he wondered, his heart racing with excitement at managing to feel the ability for the first time. He knew he still had a long way to go, but this small success was a sign that he was on the right track. This is amazing. I need more of this sensation. Minato spoke excitedly. He continued his progress again, trying to dodge the trees and obstacles in front of him, but still couldn't get the same feeling again, causing him to hit his face against various trees. I think I just got lucky. I don't think that's going to happen again anytime soon. Minato murmured, giving up on today's training since the sky was already dark, and he had to return before Madame Garit sent some chunin after a missing child. Even though he hadn't made any more progress, Minato was satisfied with the sensation he had at that moment, as it was proof that he was indeed developing the ability that would be better than any sensor at that time. Chapter 15, First Year 06. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 32. Minato's routine had become a series of rituals and strict disciplines, each day starting with the journey to school in the early hours of the morning and ending with intense training sessions in his usual field after classes on history, math, and other subjects. The academy was a mix of theoretical and practical learning, where he spent most of his day, always attentive and seeking to improve. In class, Minato was an exemplary student, but it was in the training field that he truly felt at home. His relationship with Tsuna Senju and Makoto Uchiha continued the same. The two girls, continuing their own disputes from their renowned clans, still sat by his side and accompanied him during lunch. Despite the clan differences, the three formed a peculiar trio.
Minato fought a few times against them in combats during practical classes, and despite always having lost in technique and skill in his fights against the girls, he always stood out in physical conditions, being among the first in terms of strength and endurance in the circuits that the teacher put the class through. In the kunai throwing classes, Minato observed a slow but steady improvement. His accuracy had increased by about 10%, a modest progress, but encouraging for his condition. Still, it was far from the level he aimed for. He spent extra hours practicing, each throw an attempt to refine his aim and control every day. Outside the academy, Minato dedicated himself to developing chakra control and improving observation haki. Slowly, he began to notice more moments when the ability manifested, allowing him to anticipate and dodge obstacles more effectively. However, the manifestation of his body of light, an ability he eagerly awaited, still proved elusive. Despite his incessant efforts, he couldn't trigger this elemental transformation, which left him frustrated and often injured after more intense training sessions with him hitting the trees in his way. Each night, he returned to the orphanage with new scratches and bruises, a testament to his dedication and determination. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into a whole month since his entry into this world of ninjas. Minato had made remarkable progress, but he knew he still had a long way to go. He felt himself getting stronger, closer to what he aspired to, as his path was just beginning and he had many challenges that his future held. As the sun gave way to the shadows of dusk, Minato was intensely focused on his training. With his eyes blindfolded, he ran among the trees, trying to refine his perception and reaction through observation haki. He was about to dodge another tree when an unexpected voice cut through the forest's silence. "So this is where you train?" The childlike, curious, and somewhat amused voice made Minato lose concentration at a crucial moment. Pow! Minato's forehead collided with the tree he was about to dodge. The sharp pain made him crouch down and hold his head. "Ow, ow, ow." Minato murmured, a mix of pain and frustration in his voice as he rubbed the spot where he had hurt himself. Ha. The clear and unmistakable laughter of Suna Senju echoed through the forest. She found the scene hilarious, seeing Minato with his eyes blindfolded colliding with the tree. "Don't laugh, what are you doing here?" Minato demanded, a little irritated but more embarrassed than anything. He quickly removed the blindfold from his eyes to face his friend, who was still having fun with the situation. "I wanted to see how you create all those wounds, but what kind of training is this?" "It's kind of sadistic," Suna said, still laughing, but also with a touch of genuine curiosity in her voice. Minato sighed, the initial embarrassment giving way to a slight resignation. "It's a type of training to increase my perception and reflexes," he explained, trying to regain some dignity. "It's not sadistic, it's a challenge." Suna, still smiling, approached and examined Minato's forehead. "You always try so hard. But be careful not to hurt yourself too much, okay? I don't know how this training is supposed to help you," she said, her voice now softer and more concerned. Minato nodded, silently thanking her for her concern, but still spoke with a bit of frustration. "TSK. This is my training, it improves the senses, it's very effective for the future," Minato argued, trying to explain the importance of his method to Tsuna, who still seemed to find the situation more comical than serious. "I've never heard of anything so self-harming, you had to see the booth you shocked with that tree, I still don't understand." Ha. She laughed again, genuinely finding the situation amusing, her hand pressed against her belly in an attempt to contain the laughter. "If you're here to laugh at me, I'll continue my training," Minato murmured with a frown. He began to ignore Tsuna, preparing to put the blindfold back on. "Hey, don't ignore me, wait." Tsuna stopped laughing when she saw Minato adjust the blindfold and start running through the forest again, clearly willing to continue despite the collisions and ignoring the little girl's presence. Minato ignored her and continued his run, focused on honing his perception beyond sight. Pow! With another dull thud, he fell to the ground after colliding with another tree. "Fur." Ha. Suna began to laugh again, unable to contain her amusement at seeing her friend trying so hard but continuing to crash into trees one after another. Despite the pain and embarrassment, Minato did not give up. He got up and continued his run through the forest, each collision, each bruise, bringing him closer to his goal.
Why do you keep doing this? It seems to be quite painful. Suna was no longer laughing. The initial fun had given way to genuine curiosity and a hint of concern. Why would Minato persist in something so clearly painful?
I need to become stronger, he said as he started running again, his voice mixed with determination and a hint of frustration before colliding with another tree.
Pow!
Suna watched him silently for a moment, her expression now serious and thoughtful. She realized there was more to that determination than she initially thought. She saw, perhaps for the first time, the depth of Minato's resolve and began to respect him even more for it. Even as he continued to collide with trees, Suna knew that somehow, each collision was forging Minato into something stronger, something greater.
Pow! Another collision, followed by a brief sigh of pain and determination.
Minato didn't stop, his determined figure advancing and falling, but always getting up to continue.
Pow!
Suna furrowed her brow with each sound, each thud a reminder of the brutality of the training Minato chose for himself.
Pow! And then, amid the cycle of collisions and determination, Suna finally broke the silence.
Why do you want to become stronger and why do you strive so much? She asked softly, her voice carrying a mix of genuine curiosity and concern. Minato stopped for a moment, panting. He turned to Suna, removing the blindfold from his eyes to face her directly. Because the path of a ninja isn't easy, and this is my path, he began, his voice full of a conviction that went beyond his age. I intend to live my life without regrets in this world, he continued, firmly. Minato was aware of the challenges and dangers the future might bring, and he intended to overcome all of them.
A life without regrets. Suna murmured, echoing Minato's words.
She looked at him with a unique expression.
Minato finally paused his training and turned to Suna.
I'm done for today, I'll wash off a bit of my dirt in the river and head back to the orphanage. You should go back to your house, your parents must be worried.
Minato reminded her, making Suna snap out of her thoughts as he walked away.
As Minato washed his face in the river and bid Suna goodbye to head home, the girl walked back to the village in a different direction from Minato towards the Senju clan headquarters with many thoughts on her mind, as Minato's words had touched her in some way.
Chapter 16, First Year 07. Third Person POV. Konoha, Year 32.
Minato returned to the orphanage as he had for a month in his routine every late afternoon, each day bringing new marks from his relentless training. The night had fallen, and the warm light of lamps illuminated the entrance when Madame Garit greeted him with a watchful look at the boy's arrival.
You finally came back, she said, observing the new scratches and bruises that decorated the boy's skin.
Let's go inside, she said, making room for him to enter.
Minato, he's back. All bruised as always. One of the children dining pointed out Minato entering the place. You need to take a bath first, then join the other children, Minato. Madame Garit instructed Minato.
Minato nodded and, without saying a word, went to the room to get some clean clothes and headed to the bath. After washing away the pains and dirt of the day, Minato joined the other children at the orphanage for dinner. It wasn't long before curiosity and questions began to arise. Minato, what's it like being in the elite class this year? You've been there for a month now, and everyone says only the best are in it, and it's full of future clan leaders. A child asked, his eyes shining with the idea of being among the notables of the academy. Jealous, how many contacts I could make if I were in it. Another murmured, more interested in the connections they could form. I heard that Minato has a group made up of 2 more girls. The conversation began to take on a gossip tone.
Really?
Who are they? A younger child asked, clearly intrigued.
You don't know, it's Makoto Uchiha and Suna Senju.
They're quite famous at the academy, someone replied, and a murmur of admiration swept through the table.
What? A Senju and a Uchiha? That's amazing, Minato.
I bet he's just a servant for them, so don't be surprised that Minato can walk with them, a skeptical voice sounded, mocking Minato.
TSK. You talk too much.
Minato murmured, his patience running out with the gossip and assumptions about his life.
He wasn't interested in proving anything to these children.
Minato, let's fight any time, I'll show you how a real ninja fights, one of the older ones challenged. "Hey, you're in the third year, how do you want to fight against a first year?" Another child intervened, trying to defend Minato. "Minato's in the elite class, it's fair," the challenger insisted. "It's not fair, you're just jealous," the discussion continued, each child taking a side, defending or challenging Minato.
"I'm not." "Yes, you are."
The voices mixed in chaos of arguments and accusations. Minato moved away from the discussion, finishing his meal in silence and going to rest, ignoring all those childish voices. On the other side of Konoha, at the Senju clan headquarters, very different conversations were taking place. Suna, usually lively and full of energy, was visibly distracted that night, sparking the curiosity of her family around the table.
"Suna, what's wrong? You're so focused today." Tsunade looked at her daughter with concern and curiosity. "I'm just thinking." Suna responded softly, her thoughts still on Minato's words. "Ho ho ho. What is my great-granddaughter thinking about?"
Mito, the venerable matriarch of the clan, gently teased, trying to lighten the mood with her typical good humor. "Suna, I heard you left the academy and went to one of the public training fields." Damn, observing his daughter's behavior, tried to understand the reason behind this sudden behavior.
"I went to see a friend training,"
Suna admitted, somewhat reluctant to share her thoughts and feelings.
"A friend, it usually starts like that." "Ho ho ho."
Mito joked once more, casting a knowing glance at Suna, who quickly became defensive. "It's not that," she defended herself. "I saw him train, and he was so determined in his training that it surprised me. Despite his failures, he never gave up, and I asked why he was so insistent. He told me he wants to be strong to live a life without regrets."
Suna murmured, her words carrying a mix of admiration and reflection. "Oh? Who is your friend?"
Tsunade asked, raising an eyebrow, intrigued by the effect this friend apparently had on her daughter.
"It's that one from the test day, Minato Namikaze. We've been friends since the first day," Suna stated.
"Little Suna, you're only 6 years old, you can't think about getting a boyfriend so early." Mito laughed, teasing Suna even more, who immediately blushed and protested against the implication. "It's not that, Grandma, I'm sure Suna doesn't have that kind of relationship with any boy, otherwise, that boy wouldn't survive the next day." Tsunade spoke, the intensity of her words cracking the table and causing a brief silence. "I'm sure it's nothing like that, Tsunade, you need to calm down." Dam tried to calm the mood, his serene voice contrasting with the tension that was beginning to form in the atmosphere. At that moment, Nawaki, proudly wearing his genin clothes, appeared. "I heard everything. If a boy thinks he can date my little umbrella, he can just wait for his death," he declared.
"It's not like that, uncle.
I was just surprised by it." Suna shouted, clearly embarrassed by the direction the conversation had taken. She quickly changed the subject to something that really mattered to her. "I thought about what Minato said and I also want to live a life without regrets," she said, determination shining in her eyes. "That's very good, Suna." Mito acknowledged Suna's words with a warm smile and a nod of approval. "Mom, I want to learn everything about being a powerful medic. Teach me everything." She looked at Tsunade with expectation and hope. "That's good, daughter. I'll start your more rigorous training from tomorrow after the academy when I'm not in the hospital," Tsunade replied, a glint of pride in her eyes. The next day, Suna arrived at the academy with a new determination. She was ready to absorb all the knowledge and skills she could, not just as a kunoichi but also as a future medic. "Hey, what's up with you?" Makoto asked with a raised eyebrow as Suna opened a medical book her mother had lent her. "I'm following my dream, I'm going to learn everything about medicine, Uchiha," Suna replied firmly, closing the book and looking directly at Makoto. "What's this change?" Makoto looked at Suna suspiciously, noticing the difference in her attitude. "Yesterday I went to see Minato train and discovered some things. I want to live my life without regrets too," Suna said with a smile, her voice carrying a mix of determination and inspiration. "Minato training? Where does he train?" Makoto asked. As Suna and Makoto discussed, Minato entered the classroom, completely oblivious to the girls' conversation about him. He settled in his usual place and focused on the day's lessons, dedicating himself to absorbing as much as possible from both theoretical and practical classes. During practical classes, Minato once again stood out in combats against some of the less experienced fighters. His physical strength and agility were notable, but when facing more experienced ninjas, the lack of technique and experience became apparent. Despite the defeats, Minato accepted each result as a valuable lesson, analyzing where he needed to improve and planning how he could overcome his own limitations. At the end of the day, as Minato left the academy toward his training site, he noticed a familiar presence following him. Makoto Uchiha, curious about the training that had so influenced Suna, decided to see for herself what Minato was doing. Minato, initially surprised to have company, soon resumed his usual training without caring about the Uchiha girl. He ran between the trees, his blindfold on, intensely focusing on each movement, on each sensation. Makoto watched in silence. She didn't laugh like Suna did, instead, there was a look of reflection on her face. After some time observing Minato colliding and getting up repeatedly, she finally approached. "Why do you do this?" Makoto asked, her voice carrying a mix of curiosity and newfound respect. Minato stopped, removing the blindfold and facing Makoto directly. "Because I need to be stronger. Because I have goals that I can only achieve through effort and pain," he replied earnestly. Makoto nodded, understanding. At that moment, she recognized Minato's determination not as an act of madness but as a sign of his dedication and willpower. When they parted that night, something had changed. Makoto looked at Minato not just as a classmate but as someone who, despite their differences, shared a similar determination to change their fate. Chapter 17, First Year 08. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 32. As tensions between the five great nations increased, threatening the fragile peace that had been maintained for years, life in Konoha continued. Concerns about a possible imminent conflict were present in the minds of all the world's military forces, from the most experienced leaders to ordinary ninjas. The possibility of a second ninja world war loomed like a shadow over the villages. In the midst of this whirlwind of preparations and uncertainties, a boy with golden hair stood out for his unwavering determination in Konoha. Minato, at 6 years of age, continued his rigorous training in his usual field in the forest over the months since he joined the Ninja Academy. Every possible day, he was there, running with a blindfold over his eyes, dodging trees and obstacles on the ground. It took months of constant effort and many collisions and falls with some lost baby teeth, but he finally began to feel the initial sensation of what would be the development of his observation haki. Now, he was honing his ability with mastery in its first stage, feeling everything around him as he passed through natural obstacles. Every movement, every breath, every sound, and sensation became part of his expanded consciousness. The world around him, which was once a sequence of disjointed images and sensations, was now becoming a living map in his mind, each element a note in a complex symphony that he was learning to interpret even without his eyes. With one last effort, Minato ran through the final stretch of the forest before finally stopping, panting but triumphant. "Finally, I have developed this haki," he celebrated, a feeling of accomplishment filling his young being. "Although it's just the initial stage, I can predict attacks and sense objects, something even more powerful than the Byakugan," Minato reflected, his thoughts racing as he considered the implications of his new ability. "To start, I don't need to expend chakra on an activated dojutsu to have this ability. Second, it's much more powerful than that. It's just the first stage, and I'll be able to develop it to see as far as a Byakugan, feel people's emotions, and even predict seconds into the future." Minato mused alone in the forest as evening fell, his spirit uplifted by the possibilities his new ability brought, considering it the best haki for the ninja world. After successfully mastering his technique at this initial stage, Minato returned home, his face lit with a satisfied smile. He knew there was still much to learn and improve, but that moment marked a turning point in his journey since entering this world. "I need to focus on my chakra now. I still haven't released my body of light, so it's better to focus on my control of spiritual energy for now." Minato reflected as he walked back to the orphanage. He knew that mastery of chakra was fundamental for any ninja, and without refined control, he would never reach the level of skill he desired, as he didn't want to rely only on his other unusual abilities in this world. "Today you are much better. It seems you at least know how to take care of yourself now. Unlike the last few months, you are coming back less and less injured. Madame Garit, as a daily ritual, always came to greet Minato arriving from his training. She watched the boy with a mix of maternal concern and admiration for his determination. The boy preferred to train alone in his training area rather than interact with the other children. Madame Garit always found Minato's behavior strange but accepted it, seeing how he strived to become stronger and was in the most privileged class of the academy that year. The next day, in the training class, Minato was paired with Suna for a fight. "Minato, I won't go easy on you." Suna spoke with a smile, her posture full of confidence and anticipation for the fight. "Bring it on, Suna. But how about a bet?" Minato suddenly spoke, a sly glint in his eyes. A bet with you? Why would I do that? I'm not addicted to gambling like my mother." Suna crossed her arms, a challenging expression on her face. "If you beat me, I want a jutsu that you have access to. How about that? If I win, you can ask anything from me. It can even be something that can be charged in the future." Minato proposed, his voice calm, but full of determination. "Fine, but don't regret it since you've never won a fight against me." Suna spoke, accepting the bet with determination and a touch of excitement. They then began the fight. As the fight between Suna and Minato unfolded, an air of anticipation hovered. The classmates, accustomed to seeing Minato being outdone by Suna, watched with renewed interest. Minato, now with his observation haki more developed, positioned himself with unusual confidence, his eyes focused and determined. "Ready, Minato?" Suna asked with a confident smile, ready to demonstrate her usual superiority. "Always," Minato replied, his posture calm and focused. As soon as the signal was given, Suna launched into a fast and powerful attack. Her movements, usually a blur to her opponents, were strong and precise. But this time, Minato was prepared. With the aid of observation haki, he could sense Suna's movements before they happened, like a prediction, dodging with a grace and accuracy that surprised everyone, including Suna. With each dodge and fluid movement of Minato, Suna's frustration grew. She increased the pace, unleashing a series of quick and varied attacks, but Minato continued to dodge, each of his movements synchronized with her attacks. The spectators watched, stunned, as the fight took a turn no one expected. "How are you doing this?" Suna exclaimed, her frustration turning to surprise. She had never seen Minato fight like this. "It's the training you laughed at me for one day," Minato simply replied, maintaining his focus. The fight continued, and with each move, Minato not only avoided Suna's attacks but also began to counterattack, pressing her back. Then, in a decisive moment, he saw an opening. With a quick and precise move, he pushed Suna, using her own strength and momentum against her. Suna, caught off guard, stumbled backward, unable to recover in time. With one final effort, Minato pushed her even further, and with a look of surprise and disbelief, Suna stepped out of the designated fight area, marking the end of the combat. For a moment, there was shocked silence. Then, a wave of surprised murmurs and exclamations ran through the crowd of students. Minato had won, overcoming Suna in a way no one expected. "Winner!" Minato Namikaze, the teacher announced, still a bit stunned. He didn't understand how Minato became so agile and predicted all of Suna's attacks, one of the best when it comes to a fight. Suna, still out of the fight area, looked at Minato with a mix of surprise and a twinge of frustration. "You've improved, Minato," she admitted. "Wow, Senju. He got you there." Makoto spoke and didn't miss the chance to tease Suna. "Shut up, Uchiha. He might beat you too," Suna said with a tone of frustration. Minato approached Suna at that moment with a satisfied smile, still catching his breath, reminded of the bet they had made before the fight started. "Do you remember our bet, Suna?" he asked, a sly glint in his eyes. Suna nodded, an expression of reluctance mixed with the acceptance of her defeat. "Yes, I remember. What do you want?" Minato looked around, ensuring only Suna could hear him. "I want to learn the Shadow Clone Jutsu," he revealed. This jutsu, a B-level technique, which allows the user to create real clones of themselves, was something Minato considered extremely valuable for his development as a ninja.
Suna's eyes widened, surprised by the request. The shadow clone jutsu wasn't a simple technique, it was categorized as forbidden. Are you sure? This jutsu isn't easy to master and is quite dangerous. Minato nodded with determination. I know.
But that's exactly why I want it. It will help me get stronger and reach my goals as I don't have access to jutsus like you do.
Suna sighed, a smile forming on her lips. All right, Minato.
I'll ask my mother or great-grandmother to deliver the scroll. Minato was satisfied with this, he would finally learn something powerful. He might not be as powerful as Naruto to create hundreds of clones, but having a dozen of them at this time would help him develop his jutsus and body several times over.
Chapter 18, First Year 09. Third Person POV. Ninja Academy, Konoha, Year 32.
On the following day, Minato was already seated in his place, with Makoto by his side, discussing something intensely.
What was that technique? Makoto looked curiously at Minato.
Something I've been training for many months, over half a year, Minato calmly replied.
Does it have to do with that strange training you've been doing after class, isn't it? Dodging trees blindfolded helps that much in improving your reflexes? Makoto asked curiously.
More or less, I managed to develop a technique in the midst of that.
Minato calmly responded.
Well, everyone is quite curious about it, they're still figuring out how you managed to defeat that Senju.
Makoto said, pointing towards the classroom.
All the students were looking at Minato while murmuring something about him among their groups.
Great. I hope I don't attract too much attention. I just want to fight. Minato murmured, looking at his classmates with a raised eyebrow. Minato thought a bit frustrated. The conversation between the two was interrupted with Suna entering the room and going to her usual place next to Minato.
The girl was carrying an almost palpable excitement as she approached.
Good morning, Minato. Good morning, Uchiha. Even Suna didn't make her usual grimace when she spoke to Makoto. Someone seems happy. Makoto murmured, and Minato looked at the Senju girl curiously. Let me tell you, it was hard. But my great-grandmother gave me the scroll.
Suna spoke, barely containing her enthusiasm.
She knew how important it was to get that scroll. Really? That's great. Where is it? Minato replied, equally excited.
The possibility of learning the Shadow Clone Jutsu made him eager to start.
I'm not just going to give you the scroll like that, Suna said, a mischievous glint in her eyes.
She couldn't help but have a little fun with the situation.
What? Why? Minato asked, his expression becoming a mix of surprise and suspicion. Because we're going to train together, Suna revealed with a small smile.
She knew that training together would benefit not just Minato but also help her improve her own skills, and she didn't want to fall behind Minato after yesterday's fight.
Okay. I'm fine with that then.
Minato replied, he had nothing against training with this girl.
Ha ha ha. You don't think I'll let you surpass me that easily? Besides, I want you to show me that training of yours. I still can't believe you beat me like that. We need to have a rematch. Suna grumbled. Minato nodded in agreement. Sure, we can train together.
It will be good to have someone to practice with, he said with a small smile.
HOI, what are you mumbling over there? Makoto spoke from the other side of Minato, interrupting the conversation and showing her usual curiosity. Just training, Uchiha. Suna replied in a slightly displeased tone. Oh? After Minato defeated you, you finally stopped being lazy? Makoto teased, a mocking smile on her lips. When was I lazy?
If you want to provoke me, at least speak the truth. I'm going to do training that will knock you down.
Suna retorted. I want to see that. Makoto challenged, clearly amused by the exchange of barbs.
She then turned her attention back to Minato, quickly changing the subject.
Speaking of training, I have something for you. For me? Minato raised an eyebrow, surprised by the sudden change of focus.
Yes, take this.
Makoto extended a box to Minato. Curious, he opened it and was surprised to see a dozen real kunais inside. This. Minato couldn't hide his surprise and gratitude.
The wooden kunais he had been using were limited and didn't reflect the reality of a ninja combat.
You keep complaining about using wooden kunais, here's a set for you to train with. Makoto said with a wink, clearly pleased to be able to help her friend. How suspicious, you giving a gift to him. You're not interested in Minato, are you? Suna tried to provoke. Unlike you, I don't need to make a bet to give a friend a present. Makoto retorted arrogantly. What did you say? Suna didn't like that comment and was ready to respond in kind. Hey, calm down. Thank you, Makoto, this will help me a lot. Minato intervened before the discussion between the two escalated further.
After a day full of theoretical and practical lessons, the bell finally rang, announcing the end of the activities at the academy.
Minato and Suna bid farewell to Makoto and the other classmates.
As they left the room, they went directly to the training site to study the scroll Suna had obtained from Mito with the jutsu created by the second Hokage. As soon as they arrived at the training field, a familiar and isolated area surrounded by trees and dense vegetation, both prepared to begin.
Suna took out the scroll and carefully unrolled it. The instructions for the Shadow Clone Jutsu were there, written with detail and precision. Are you ready? Suna asked, looking at Minato with a serious expression.
She knew that mastering this technique would not be easy and would require impeccable concentration and chakra control.
Always, let's start. Minato responded. Suna began by explaining the fundamentals of the jutsu, the way the chakra should be shaped and divided.
Minato listened attentively, absorbing every word. After the explanation, they began to practice, trying repeatedly to shape their chakra correctly to create a clone with the crossed finger seal. In the beginning, their attempts were frustrating. Creating a clone that was more than a mere illusion was more difficult than they had imagined.
But Minato didn't give up.
With each attempt, he adjusted his technique, learning from his mistakes, and striving to better understand the jutsu's complexity. Suna, in turn, also tried focusing her chakra with her seal, but she still had as much difficulty as Minato. She was learning while correcting Minato when necessary and encouraging him to keep trying. The sun began to set, casting long shadows over the training field, but the two children still persisted, driven by determination and the desire to master the jutsu. As night fell and the stars began to appear in the sky, Minato finally made a breakthrough. With a concentrated effort, he shaped his chakra more successfully and, to his surprise, a clone collapsed on the ground appeared beside him.
What is this? Ha 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 ha.
Tsunade began to laugh at Minato's small clone. It was a copy of the clone Naruto created in the first episode, if that could even be called a clone.
That was terrible. Minato had to admit, looking at his clone.
They tried for a while longer, but they reached their limits, exhausted but not discouraged. They finally agreed to end the training for that day.
Let's try again tomorrow.
It's our day off from the academy, so we'll have the whole day to practice, Suna suggested. Minato nodded in agreement, seeing that it was pointless to continue when everything was dark. Tomorrow, without a doubt, we'll make more progress, he said, confidence in his voice bringing a smile to Tsuna's face. The next day, with a break from the academy, both met at the same training field in the morning. The sun was still low in the sky, casting a soft light over the forest. They began immediately, picking up where they had left off and striving even harder to master the technique.
I did it! Suna was the first to make a clone. Finally, as the afternoon progressed, Minato made a new attempt to form a clone.
He shaped his chakra with precision, and this time, a stable and solid clone appeared beside him. The clone stood firm, an almost perfect mirror of Minato, before dissipating calmly.
You did it, Minato!
I knew you could, she exclaimed, running to hug him in a spontaneous gesture of celebration. Minato, surprised by the hug, hesitated for a moment before reciprocating, a genuine smile forming on his face.
Thank you, Suna.
I think we finally managed to master it, he said.
Shall we start sending clones to school now? Suna asked curiously.
I don't think that's a good choice. We might have only been able to create these clones because we have more chakra than the other children, but it's still risky for a newly learned technique.
Maybe at the beginning of the year, what do you think?
Our chakra will be more stable to leave the clone in class while we train somewhere else.
Minato suggested and Suna nodded, understanding the situation.
I think you're right, but I want to see the face of that Uchiha when she finds out that who's beside her are just clones.
Ha 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 ha. Suna had a devilish face at that moment. Chapter 19, First Year 10. Third Person POV. Training Camp, Konoha, Year 32.
In the last months of the year, Minato's routine solidified into a continuous cycle of what he had been doing all year. Each morning, he would rise before the sun to train his body before heading to the academy. He continued to attend the academy, where his skills visibly improved, and his classmates and teachers began to recognize the boy's growing competence in areas where he had been weak. He quickly began to outperform everyone in circuits with physical tests, and his body rapidly adapted to any challenge. His kunai accuracy shot up from 40% to 70% after he began training with the real kunais that Makoto gifted him. In the tests with the rings, Minato dominated the class, almost never losing a duel since he activated his observation haki. It wasn't a surprise how everyone was stunned by how the boy could simply predict all the opponent's attacks, even in blind spots, making even the Hyuga brothers of the class, Hayashi Hyuga and Hisashi Hyuga, ask if Minato had his own Byakugam. Even the arrogant Uchihas couldn't escape their defeats against the civilian's incredible prediction ability, making him the #1 student when neither Suna nor Makoto could defeat him. Minato had changed from the odd civilian to the Rookie of the Year, surpassing all the future leaders of the clans.
But Minato didn't limit his dominance to just the academy.
The training field in the forest became a second home for him. He spent hours there, tirelessly working on his chakra control, perfecting the shadow clone jutsu, and advancing in the mastery of observation haki. Even when it got dark, he was still training. With each passing day, he became more agile, stronger, and more attuned to the world around him. In these training sessions, Suna became a frequent visitor. She participated in his training sessions, even risking doing the strange training of running blindfolded in the forest, but that didn't end very well for her in the first weeks and she ended up giving up that training, limiting herself to just fighting Minato in their sparrings that they did all the time. Minato and Suna seemed to have developed something more over time, even though neither admitted it. There was something growing between the two, as they spent every day together in recent months. Makoto was a girl who wanted to be with them, but her clan prohibited any training done outside of the clan, so her visits were very limited. With the freedom of Minato and Suna together, they laughed, shared stories and challenges, and occasionally competed in friendly training fights. Suna, in turn, was developing her own abilities, perfecting the hereditary techniques of the Senju clan, and exploring new areas of ninja knowledge, such as medical ninjutsu, inspired by her mother, Tsunade, in the following months. That day, the training field in the forest was a scene of effort, determination, and friendly rivalry. While tensions between neighboring nations grew and rumors of imminent conflict spread through Konoha, Minato and Suna continued to focus on their development, preparing for whatever the future brought. Minato and Suna had spent the last hours in intensive training, practicing their techniques, improving their reflexes, and testing each other. It was a routine that had become familiar but never monotonous, each session bringing new challenges and learning opportunities. I give up. Suna's voice, mixed with exhaustion and a hint of frustration, echoed through the open space. She fell to the ground, breathing heavily, looking at Minato with an expression that had more to say. Already, Suna? You gave up quicker than yesterday. Minato commented, a playful smile on his lips, but his eyes showed genuine concern for his friend. You have a damn weird ability that can predict all attacks, that's not fair. Suna murmured, referring to Minato's observation haki, an ability he had developed and perfected over the months. You shouldn't say that, you have an incredible lineage in your veins, you're the second best student in the class, Minato replied. I'm not the first, even though I'm satisfied to show that Uchiha that I'm the best, I'm not the first in the class, Minato. My great-grandfather was the first Hokage. I should be more than this. Suna exclaimed, standing up abruptly. Minato looked at Suna, his blue eyes reflecting a deep understanding. He knew how difficult it was for her to deal with the expectations and pressure of being the great-granddaughter of the first Hokage.
Suna, you're amazing just the way you are. You don't need to be first in everything to prove your worth. Your great-grandfather would be proud to see the kunoichi you're becoming.
I'm sorry for that, I shouldn't be talking to you like this, it's just that 2 members of the Senju clan died on a mission yesterday. She murmured with a bit of sadness.
Died?
Minato repeated with a concerned look, already imagining what might have happened.
Yes, the Senju clan is disappearing, Minato.
There are only a few of us left, even assuming my mother's name, I'm still worried.
I should be stronger. Suna murmured, her voice laden with a mix of sadness and determination. Being strong is good, Suna, but don't let it consume you.
Minato spoke, placing a hand on her shoulder in a gesture of comfort, and continued his speech. If it's to protect those you love, it's important, but don't let it spoil your relationships.
Get strong, but always keep people around who can celebrate your strengthening together.
Minato's words were sincere, inspired by what Naruto might say to someone at this moment.
I think you're right, thank you, Minato.
She murmured, a slight blush of gratitude and shyness coloring her cheeks.
You should. The intimate conversation was abruptly interrupted by sudden danger.
Kunais flew towards them from the surrounding forest.
Minato, reacting instinctively, drew a kunai and defended himself and Suna from the projectiles. Metallic sound *, metallic sound.
The metallic sound of impacts echoed through the air, a sharp reminder of the dangerous world they lived in.
Oh.
You're good, an unknown voice commented from the forest, and an older boy, apparently about 12 years old, emerged from the shadows of the trees. His presence was imposing, and there was a glint of challenge in his eyes.
Nowaki. What are you doing here? Suna expressed her surprise and slight discomfort at seeing her uncle suddenly appear after attacking Minato. What? I just came to see if my niece is alright.
There have been many deaths in our clan, and you're here until this time.
How can I not be worried? Nowaki responded. Suna knew that Nowaki had good intentions but felt a bit suffocated by the constant protection.
I think I have to go. She turned to Minato with an apologetic look, indicating that their training together would have to be interrupted. It's okay, it's already dark, Minato replied with understanding but kept a watchful eye on Nowaki.
Don't forget to come to class tomorrow.
It will be our last day, Suna reminded Minato, who nodded in agreement.
Is he your boyfriend?
I heard he's the number 1 rookie of your class, Nowaki asked as he walked away with Suna from the site.
He's not my boyfriend. Suna responded promptly, a bit flushed by Nowaki's assumption. Meanwhile, Minato walked away, leaving Suna and Nowaki behind.
He reflected on the last day of the year approaching. It was a day when not only parents would be watching their children but also future teachers, masters, and maybe even members of the high ranks of Konoha like the Hokage himself. Everyone would be assessing the abilities and potential of the first-year students. Minato was prepared to break all the academy's records the next day, as was naturally expected of him.
Chapter 20, First Year 11. Third-person POV. Training Camp, Konoha, Year 32. On the last day of school, the Konoha Ninja Academy was filled with an unusual energy and anticipation.
The first-year Class A, known for having the most exceptional students of the year, was the center of attention, and the presence of a crowd of spectators, proud parents, respected ninjas, and important figures from the Konoha clans only increased the tension and excitement. The morning began with a summary of the lessons taught throughout the year by Professor Fuma.
He went through a detailed review, ensuring that the fundamentals were firmly established in each student's mind.
Then, all the students were given a written test, which they completed quickly as their theoretical exam for the year. During the break, Minato was surprised to see Madame Gurit accompanied by some students from other classes. She approached him with a warm smile and words of encouragement.
Minato, you will have an important test this afternoon.
I heard that the Hokage himself will appear, so good luck to you. Minato thanked her, feeling a mix of gratitude for the woman who had always taken care of him.
The academy courtyard began to fill even more.
In addition to the parents and clan members, Jonins began to infiltrate the crowd, their presence signaling the importance of the day. And then, with an entrance befitting his status, the Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, arrived. His presence immediately attracted everyone's attention, and he gathered the crowd for a speech. Minato, while somewhat respecting the Hokage, felt a certain boredom during the speech. He was more interested in locating his friends.
Makoto was somewhere with her clan, the Uchihas displaying their usual pride. Suna was next to her parents, listening intently to the words of the Hokage. The speech, filled with words of encouragement and hope, ended with respectful applause from the crowd. After the speech, while some students returned to their classrooms, Class A remained in the courtyard. It was time for the practical tests, and all the spectators were eager to see the young ninja's skills in action. Minato felt some of the pressure and expectation, but also a firm determination. He had prepared for this moment, and now was the time to show the results of his hard work. Quickly the children were called for the first test, while all others took a place as spectators on the platform set up for the viewers. Among the spectators, the Jonins and the Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, watched with keen interest, ready to witness the potential of the new generation of ninjas. The academy courtyard had been transformed into a complex training field, with various testing stations set up under the supervision of Professor Fuma and other experienced shunins who took care of the boys' evaluations. The first test of the day was the obstacle course. The students were called in groups, each positioning themselves at the starting line with a mix of nervousness and determination. The circuit in front of them was a series of physical challenges designed to test their agility, speed, and strength. As soon as everyone lined up, the teacher gave the signal to start the test. Begin! With the command from one of the teachers, the group of students took off. They ran, jumped, and climbed with all they had, each trying to outdo the others and, more importantly, overcome their own limits. Minato, with his usual calm and focus, quickly took the lead. He moved with a grace and efficiency that set him apart from the others. Even without using chakra to enhance his performance, his natural speed and agility were evident. He climbed the walls with ease, jumped the pits with precision, and maneuvered through the nets as if he were dancing. That boy. He's the famous Minato Namikaze, the civilian who entered Class A Jonin questioned, watching Minato overcome the obstacles with a skill rarely seen in someone his age or someone using only their physical strength without chakra to enhance their power. Interesting. He's not even using chakra, but his body is naturally very fast. Another evaluator commented, impressed with Minato's performance. Murmurs of admiration spread among the observers, many of whom were now focused exclusively on the young Minato. Hiruzen, the Hokage, watched with a keen and thoughtful gaze. Hokage-sama, we have good fruits this year, one of the Jonins commented beside him. It's true. I cannot deny that. Hiruzen replied, his gaze still fixed on Minato. He saw a talented young man with a bright future ahead. As Minato crossed the finish line, a wave of applause and exclamations of surprise ran through the crowd. He had completed the circuit in an impressive time, setting a high standard for the other students. On a rooftop near the academy, a figure watched the unfolding events attentively. It was a man with white hair, looking at Minato with an interest that went beyond the casual. His eyes followed every movement of the young student, analyzing and evaluating with the precision of an experienced ninja. Good job, boy. He murmured to himself, a slight smile forming on his lips as he assessed Minato's potential. Then the first stage ended with Minato claiming first place, an impressive result for a civilian amidst so many renowned clans. Let's move on to the second stage. Kunai throwing, announced Professor Fuma, taking charge of this part of the test. He instructed the children to prepare, distributing kunais and designating targets. One by one, the students threw their kunais, aiming to hit the center of the targets positioned in front of them. The evaluators watched closely, quickly noting the results. As expected, members of the Uchiha clan proved particularly proficient at this task, their natural abilities and intensive training quickly taking the lead in the group. It seems the boy isn't so good with kunais, commented a Jonin, noticing that Minato wasn't among the best in this stage. This is his first year, remember he's a civilian who's never received formal training. You should give some credit to the boy.
A chunin murmured at his side, defending Minato's effort and progress. Minato, for his part, had hit 70% of the targets, a result that placed him in 12th place. It wasn't the best, but for him, who had spent a year striving and training, it was a satisfactory outcome and a starting point for future improvements. He nodded to himself, already planning how he would surpass this result next year. As the kunai test came to an end, the atmosphere in the Ninja Academy became electric, with palpable excitement and anticipation among both students and audience. The most awaited moment of the day had finally arrived, the fights in the ring. It was time for each student to prove their worth not just in physical and technical skills, but also in strategy, adaptability, and emotional control under the watchful eyes of the spectators. Students, one by one, were called to the center of the ring, each name announced generating murmurs and expectations. The fights promised to be the highlight of the day, a spectacle of young developing skills. Some of the first fights announced were Suna Senju vs Makoto Uchiha, a confrontation that already promised to be one of the most exciting fights of the day, pitting two of the most talented kunoichis against each other, representatives of legendary and rival clans. Shikaku Nara vs Inoichi Yamanaka, a battle of intellects and strategies, a clash that would bring to the fore the sagacity and creativity characteristic of these clans. Choza Akimichi vs Hayashi Hyuga, strength against precision, brute power challenging the skill of control and keen vision. A duel of opposite styles, but equally respected. Ibiki Marino vs Kaito Aburame. Osi Ibiki, with his ambition to become a competent jonin, would face Kaito, a representative of the enigmatic Aburame clan with their insect-based techniques. Hizashi Hyuga vs Arata Sarutobi. Osi Hizashi, with his Byakugan ability, against Arata, a promising young member of the Sarutobi clan known for their tenacity and potentially fire-related skills. Other fights also promised to be exciting. Guren Uchiha vs Ryohei Inuzuka. OC, the clash between the refined technique of the Uchiha clan and the ferocity of the Inuzuka clan. Tsum Inuzuka vs Haruto Kurama. OC, the agility and savagery of Tsum would face the creativity and illusory powers of Haruto, a young talent from the Kurama clan known for their genjutsu skills. This confrontation would test not just physical strength but also mental endurance and the ability to adapt to unexpected strategies. And, finally, the duel that many awaited with great anticipation. Minato Namikaze vs Akame Uchiha, the talented civilian, known for his ambitions and notable skills, would face Akame, a member of the prestigious Uchiha clan. All eyes would be on this confrontation, to see how the young Minato would fare against such a formidable opponent. All the spectators watched attentively for the unfolding of these fights. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.